Tactics in the Vietnam War. The tactics used by the Vietcong and the American soldiers were completely different. In 1965, the Vietcong had about 170,000 soldiers. These were guerrilla forces who used hit and run tactics. They would attack the enemy and then they'd disappear back into the jungles. This made it easy for the Vietcong to carry out surprise, short, sharp attacks on American soldiers, and then they could disappear into the jungle, into areas they knew very, very well. They knew the terrain very well, and they used this to their advantage. They also built a system of tunnels underground. These tunnels were really, really long and really complex. They had kitchens, they had hospitals, they had places for Vietcong soldiers to sleep, and they were really, really difficult for the American soldiers to find. The Vietcong knew where they were and could protect them and keep them out of the reach of the American soldiers. The Vietcong were supplied by the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and the Americans found it impossible to close down this supply route. Because they had this supply route, the Vietcong were able to sustain their attacks on the American soldiers. The Vietcong also used booby traps. They used booby traps that would play tricks on American soldiers, and they would make the American soldiers very, very fearful of everywhere they went. The Vietcong also had the support of the local people, or lots of local people. This allowed them to merge in and mix in unnoticed with local, regular South Vietnamese peasants. The American soldiers didn't know who was a Vietcong soldier and who was a normal South Vietnam soldier. This allowed the Vietcong to disappear and melt back into the background away from the American soldiers. The hit and run tactics, the guerrilla tactics, the booby traps, the fact they had South Vietnam support all helped the Vietcong, in addition to their knowledge of the area, to fight a very, very effective war against the Americans. The Americans had the complete opposite tactics of the Vietcong. The Americans went for high-tech, high-powered weaponry against the Vietcong. The Americans in 1965 started an operation called Operation Rolling Thunder. This involved dropping lots and lots and lots of bombs on Vietnam and North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh Trail, to try and get rid of the Vietcong and defeat them in the Vietnam War. They dropped chemical weapons. There were two chemical weapons called Napalm and Agent Orange. Napalm was a burning liquid that set fire to things as it landed and detonated. And there's a very famous picture of a little girl running down the street half naked because she's been attacked by napalm. Agent Orange was a defoliant spread on the trees. 82 million litres of Agent Orange was spread on the trees to try and strip them of the leaves so that the American soldiers could see clearly where the Vietcong soldiers were. But it didn't work. All that happened was both those things ended up turning the South Vietnamese against the Americans because they saw the damage that was done. It ended up costing the Americans, according to Life magazine, $400,000 to kill each Vietcong soldiers. That included 75 bombs, a huge amount. The Americans were very young and inexperienced. The average age for an American soldier was 19. They weren't trained in guerrilla tactics. They didn't know what to do. 30% of them turned to heroin to cope with the conditions.